Welcome back. Last episode we saw the boat get lifted out of the water. This episode we're going to take a closer look at the underside of the boat in a bit more detail and try and work out what jobs need tackling. I'm going to start by pulling many bits off the boat, and whilst I have in my mind a specific set of jobs that I want to achieve, I'm basically going to remove anything that's looking flaky and in need of a bit of love. And if you'd like to see more of these B-roll shots of marine scenes of Guernsey as an intro, let me know down in the comments. Okay. It's out of the water and it's on its cradle. There's a couple of things I want to check out straight away. One is the prop. So our prop is damaged. We got a rope wrapped around it when we were at fairly high power. What it's done is it's stripped out these teeth that are supposed to mesh these blades together, so they no longer synchronize. So when you're sailing, one always sort of droops down like that. It's probably creating a fair bit of drag. In fact, even more so, because it doesn't appear out one pushes up. Yeah, it's just not ideal, is it? Yeah, a lot of vibration in the prop, although a whole prop shaft moved. I have a feeling that used to happen. So I think we're going to have to change out that cutlass bearing in there, a job I'm not massively looking forward to. Yeah, the other thing is the rudder. I've always felt we've had a fair bit of play in the tiller. So as I said in the earlier video, this is a skeg hung rudder. This is a skeg glassed into the boat, and it supports the rudder at the bottom here. I'm guessing there'll be a bearing inside there. And that means that the rudder can't fall out, which is good. If we press on it, well, yeah, I don't know. Oh, we go. That's not looking ideal. That's probably why we've got that kind of play in the tiller. So yeah, there's two jobs. And the other one is we've had this kind of permanent leak into the boat when it's in the water. And I believe it's from this here, which used to be a port for a sensor. I believe the sensor is still on the inside of the boat. So we need to decide whether to grind that out and glass over it, or whether just to use some epoxy filler and close it up. This is our log sensor, effectively our speed through the water. It's just simply a little flappy paddle, spins around, and there's a little detector above it that picks up when it rotates. We've been having a lot of problems with this, and there's been some kind of weed growing in here that yeah, keeps binding it up. So you need to give that a good clear out as well. The other options, we replace it with an electromagnetic sensor, which have no moving parts, so it separates them. It's the other thing that blows my mind somewhat. So this is where the keel meets the boat, and you can see the line actually where the keel plate is bolted up to. It's all kind of flush here, which is good. Nice little bit there we need to cover. But here you come this side. I don't know how well you can make that out in the video, but it's like this lump. It's a massive lump. Why? What is it? Is it a really bad filling job? Has the keel plate cracked? Who knows? Okay, as I'm fairly new to this, I don't really know how best to present these sections while I'm actually doing some hands-on stuff with the boat. I've chosen to speed the footage up and talk over it. If people would rather see it in real time, I might publish a second version of this video. Alternatively, if just clipping to the highlights is better, just let me know down below in the comments what works best for people. Okay, this is our Elish Radis 2-blade folding
propeller, if that's how you pronounce it. It was a reasonably good propeller, despite being on the budget end of the folding prop kind of market. It always had a lot of prop walk in the stern, but I think that's fairly normal. Right, what I'll do is explain briefly how I'm going to get the prop off, and then I'll tell you the story about how the prop ended up in this way. So these propellers are famous for stripping those bolts that I'm trying to undo to have yellow Allen key. They get kind of stuck, yeah, basically, and they're slightly small, so the hex head gets stripped off. So the best way to free them up is with heat. I've actually also used a penetrant oil there that you saw me spraying on. That was slightly pointless really for penetrating oil to work properly. You need to leave it working, whereas I'm pretty much immediately applying heat to it. How the heat works is it allows the brass to expand at a greater rate than the steel bolt, and that helps free it up. Those two bolts hold in place the retaining pins that run sideways through the propeller, and those pins are what's holding the blades onto the prop. So it's not that difficult to disassemble, provided you can get those retaining bolts free. Once those are off, there's a little brass retaining pin that sits across the opening. You tap that out, and then you've got access to the bolt that holds the propeller onto the prop shaft. There's also a keyway with a little insert to help the prop stay aligned to the prop shaft so it doesn't slip. And yeah, once you've done everything, you just tap the prop off, and that's it. How it ended up in this condition is a bit of a story. We were at the end of a race, and we were coming around the final mark onto a downwind leg to the finish. And as the boat in front of us rounded the mark, they dropped their spinnaker in the water. And being an idiot, I burst out laughing and found it hilarious, which of course had the effect of when we went round the corner, bad things happened to us. We went to raise our symmetrical spinnaker, and it was all looking good. The spinnaker got about 2/3 of the way up, and then it stopped going up. And I shouted at my crew to carry on raising it, and the guy cranked away on the winch, and he was like, "It's not going anywhere." And I looked up, and basically the halyard for the spinnaker had got jammed down the side of the block. The block was really, really old. It might even be original to the boat, which would make it about 48 years old. So yeah, it was fully jammed. So we're on this downwind leg going towards the finish, and we decide to just carry on because we're going in the right direction, and there was a lot of sea room after we crossed the finish line. So we're heading towards the finish line, which is outside Guernsey's main harbour, and we can't see anything in front of us because the spinnaker's low enough that it's basically taking up all of the field of view in front of the boat. So I had to go lie on the foredeck with the spinnaker pulled over my head, just staring out from underneath it, which must have looked fairly comedy to any other racing boat around us. As we get near the finish line, we start making plans for how we're going to handle this situation. And I tell the guys, we'll fire up the engine, and I'll go up the mast, and I'll lower it. I'll try and grab the halyard and unclip the spinnaker, or if not, just cut it down. And it all started going wrong fairly quickly. We went to start the engine, found the key, which is rare, went to put it in the ignition barrel, and the ignition barrel wasn't there. It had unscrewed and dropped out of the engine panel into the boat. So I went to grab that inside the boat, had to hold it up into the hole whilst one of the crew started it up. Got a bit of an electric shock as they did that, so wasn't overly chipper about that. So anyway, the engine's now running, and we start to turn into the wind because the spinnaker obviously is blowing away from the boat. And in order to reach the halyard, I needed the boat to be upwind, so the spinnaker was against the mast. So anyway, we're struggling to turn upwind because the spinnaker is inflated enough that it's it's overpowering the engine. So I tell the guy in the helm to really kind of give it the beans, and he does. And we start to come around to the wind, and we're all thinking, all right, this is great. But in the panic, the spinnaker lines have gone overboard, and all of a sudden there's this massive bang, and basically we've prop wrapped one of the spinnaker lines so violently that it's torn 3 of the engine mounts and completely stalled the engine, obviously. So anyway, I go downstairs and I take a look at the engine, and it's up at like a, I don't know, 20-degree angle, maybe a bit higher. Cocked over. We're very, very lucky the stern gland didn't fail and flood the boat. So we put the engine into neutral, dropped it back down onto its mounts, tried to get it restarted so that we could reverse the prop and try and undo the wrap. So that went on for a while, and the result of it was it didn't really run without vibrating like crazy after that, and that's because it had destroyed the mesh between the 2 blades. So yeah, that was an interesting set of events. We actually carried on using the prop for quite a while after that, but yeah, it's time for it to go. It's too much of a risk, and performance wise it's definitely been affected by it. So yeah, that's how our prop ended up like this. Apologies, that rambled on a bit. So you can see the propellers off. We then took the stern anode off, which wasn't actually protecting anything, or at least wasn't directly connected to anything. We then took the prop shaft out. That will enable us to take the cutlass bearing out. And at the moment on screen you can see I'm taking the coupler of the gearbox. Then we'll be able to remove the stern gland, and then we'll be able to knock the cutlass bearing out from the side. We can take the stern gland off, so I want to inspect that, probably put a new bit of tube on it. And that's mainly because this is a flexible type stern gland. So what that means is the stern gland is normally physically connected to the stern tube, but with these it actually floats on a bit of rubber hose, and over time as that rubber tube ages or is damaged by the engine being at weird angles, it can of course suddenly fail, and that's a bad situation. So that's really it for the mechanical work for this episode. I'm not overly happy with how this has gone. I think I could have done this in a more entertaining way with better audio quality. However, if you've made it this far, thank you very much and well done. I'll make sure the next episode is a bit more interesting to watch. Yeah, thanks again. See you next time.